Hey guys, I'm Saurav, and in this video I'm going to talk about portrait photography. For this particular video I'm collaborating with Harshila. She makes videos about fashion, lifestyle and beauty. So make sure you check her channel. The link will be popping right here and also down in the description. So I'm continuing the intro from here because it was too dark and it was getting too noisy. Let's talk about the contents of the video first. The topics that I'm going to discuss is first the camera gear, second the camera settings, third is focusing for getting sharp portraits, fourth is the composition, and fifth is how we use a reflector to actually modify the natural light. And the last topic which we are going to talk about is the location, the background and the lighting. So I hope these tips will help you to be a better portrait photographer. And Shutout is collaborating with me for a portrait photography contest and you can win cash prizes. The details of the contest will be given later in this video. Most of the images you see in this video are shot by one of my talented friend Sagar Tripathi. He's an excellent portrait photographer. His Instagram account will be linked in the description below. So that's about the introduction. Now let's finally start the video. The first thing we are going to talk about is the camera gear. Now when it comes to portrait photography, the camera does not matter much. What matters more are the lenses. Now for portrait photography, prime lenses are recommended. If you want to get that shallow depth of field, that blurry bokeh background, you need a lens that has a wider aperture. The images you see in this video are shot with the 50mm, 85mm and the 7200mm. So for lenses, if you're using a kit lens, it's not that you can't shoot good portraits, but for stepping up your portrait game, you need to invest in a prime lens. I generally would recommend to get a 50mm lens, and then if you want a tighter lens, you can go for a 85mm, or if you want to shoot wider portraits, you can go for a 35mm too. Now the lenses matter a lot because different focal length have a different look. Now you can see I'm using the same composition, but as I go from 70 to 200mm, the background depth and the model looks a bit different. So make sure about the kind of result you want and accordingly choose the lenses. Now that was all about camera gear. But doesn't matter if you have a good camera gear, you should also know how to use it. And that brings me to the next point, that is the camera settings. In this video, all the shots you see are shot with manual mode. Now when I'm shooting in natural light, all the images are shot at ISO 100 because the light is sufficient. And then I set my aperture to a wider aperture. When I'm shooting with the 70-200, it's generally 2.8. With the 50mm, it's generally 1.8. Now it also depends on the depth of field I want. If I want to include my background, I will go with a smaller aperture. And then later, according to the light meter, I decide my shutter speed. Remember, this is only when you have good natural light. If you are shooting in low light, you might have to increase the ISO as well. See my video about manual mode if you don't know how to use manual mode. If you are uncomfortable with handling the shutter speed, you can also try shooting in aperture priority mode. Now when it comes to portrait photography, camera settings are not the most important part. There are other parts that you should focus on. And that brings me to the next point, that is focusing. Now be it any kind of photography, focusing is really important. You want the subject to be in focus. And in portrait photography, it's extremely crucial because you're dealing with shallow depth of field most of the times. Now when the subject is in the same plane as the lenses, then it's no issue. If you focus on any of the eye, both the eyes will be in focus. The problem starts when the subject is not in plane, and if that's the case, always focus on the closest eye. And make sure the focus is stacked sharp, because when you're dealing with that shallow depth of field, even if you miss focus just by a bit, it will be very visible in the images and the images won't look good. So make sure with the proper aperture and proper focus, you're getting tacked sharp portrait images. Now this was all about the technical part, but as you know, photography is a combination of technicality and aesthetic part, and that brings me to the next point, that is composition. Now if you don't know the composition techniques, I have a video on composition where I explain the composition techniques in depth, so watch that and the link will be in the description and popping right here. So all the composition guidelines like leading lines, rule of thirds can be used in portrait photography as well. The subject is the main focus of the image and you want the attention of the viewer to go to the subject directly. You have to make sure you're avoiding the distractions, and one method to avoid the distractions in the background is by using a wider aperture and focusing on the subject. But other than that, if you're using good composition, you will be able to see that actually the images look much better. So there's not much to talk about composition, but if you see the images right now, you will understand how composition is used to get pleasing images. One very important tip to make your portrait images look amazing is adding a foreground element. Now when you intentionally keep the foreground element out out of focus, you will be able to get very cool looking flare and the images will look really good. You don't have to use Photoshop to add flare. You can actually get everything perfect in camera. So try to use some foreground element to get better looking images. The next tip is using Reflector. Now, when you're dealing with natural light, you don't have much flexibility in modifying the light. That is where Reflector is going to be very useful. Reflector is an object which basically reflects light. So the light falls on the reflector and the light is reflected. This is used when you want to get rid of shadows and when you want the light to look more even. Now Reflector comes basically in silver and golden parts. The reflector I am using, I will link that down in the description below. Now generally silver side of the reflector is used, but you can also use the golden side of the reflector. It actually works very nicely when you have that brownish skin tone and you want to add some warmth and color to the skin tones. So Reflector won't only be used to eliminate the shadows, but at the same time to give that even light and make the colors pop. So if you're in portrait photography, try to get a reflector. It's not very expensive, but it will be a very useful tool. The last but not the least is the location, the background and the lighting. Now talking about the light, you obviously want good light, and the best time of the day to shoot is just before sunset when you have that soft glow from the sun. You will notice that the images look much better if you have good light, and that is not only in the case of portrait photography but any genre of photography. Let's talk about the location and the background. Now when it comes to landscape photography, the location matters a lot, but when it comes to portrait photography, it does not matter as much. Now even if you're shooting in a not so good location, you can actually use the background to your advantage and create better looking images. Right now I'm not shooting in a very beautiful location, but as you can see, the background is completely blurred and still I'm able to produce very good looking content. In the same way, you can actually use different backgrounds. If you're getting white blown out backgrounds, you can actually move a bit and search for some tree to get that bokeh. You can move into shade or you can move into light, and you have to actually very carefully analyze the background and you will be good to go. So location doesn't matter as much. Of course, if you are shooting in a good location, it's a good point. But still, if you're not shooting, you can still create better images. So that was it from this video, guys. Now talking about the competition. Now as I said in the beginning, Shutout is collaborating with me for a portrait photography contest. So there you can submit your portrait images and win cash prizes. There are two ways to enter. One is a free entry and one is a premium entry. For premium entry, you have to pay $2, but if you register through my link that is in the description below, you will actually get an additional $2 bonus to actually submit a different premium entry or participate in any other photography contest. Now there are tons of photography contests. You can visit their site for more information. Now the base price of the contest starts at $50, but as more participants participate for the premium entry, the cash prize will increase. Submit your best portrait images and all the best for the competition. Before ending the video, I would like to thank all the friends for helping me shooting this video. It was a really difficult video for me to shoot, and the birds right now are not allowing me to actually continue talking, so I will end the video right here. If you enjoyed the video, press the like button. If you loved it, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.